The grand chamber floated in the void of space, a massive structure that orbited the neutral world of Velthera. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated positions. The chamber was designed to impress and intimidate. Its walls were transparent, showing the infinite stars beyond. Each delegate sat on platforms that floated at different heights, creating a tower of judgment that looked down upon whoever stood at the center today. That person was Jiwan. She stood alone in the circle of light at the chamber's center. Her dark uniform was simple, compared to the elaborate costumes and biological displays of the aliens around her. She kept her hands clasped behind her back and her face calm. Above her, the magistrate Dexler pulsed with colors that shifted through the spectrum. The crystalline being served as the voice of the council, speaking for all when decisions were made. Ambassador Giwan of Humanity, the magistrate's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language. You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your species' violations. Jiwan said nothing. She simply waited. The magistrate continued, its crystalline body flashing with irritation at her silence. Humanity has expanded beyond the borders agreed upon in the integration accords. Your colony ships have entered 6 restricted sectors. Your military fleet has grown by 400% in just 2 decades. This behavior threatens the peace we have maintained for 3,000 years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Some made sounds with their various speech organs. Others communicated through color changes or chemical signals that were translated by the chamber's systems. The council has been patient with your young species, Dexler said. We welcomed you into galactic civilization only 60 years ago. We offered you technology, trade, and protection. We asked only that you follow the rules that keep all species safe. Yet you have broken these rules repeatedly, Juan finally spoke. We have broken no laws. You have violated the preservation accords. Dexler's voice rose. You have expanded into zones designated for controlled development. You have militarized beyond the levels permitted for species of your age and size. We have colonized unclaimed systems, Juan replied calmly. We have built ships to protect our people. The accords permit both activities. The accords permit expansion with council approval, another delegate called out. This one was Velkrin, the military coordinator. His species looked like walking columns of muscle covered in thick plates. You never sought approval. You simply took what you wanted. We applied for expansion permits 17 times, Giwan said. Each application was denied or delayed indefinitely. Meanwhile, other species received immediate approval for similar requests. We followed your process until it became clear the process was designed to limit us, not guide us. The chamber erupted in protests. Delegates shouted accusations in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Vexler pulsed with angry reds and oranges, finally releasing a sound that silenced the room. Enough, the magistrate said. The council has made its decision. Humanity must cease all expansion immediately. You will reduce your military fleet by 50% within 1 standard cycle. You will submit to council inspectors, who will ensure compliance. You will pay reparations for the violations already committed. Jiwan stood perfectly still, and if we refuse, the chamber fell silent. No species had ever refused a council directive. Not in 3,000 years. Dexler's colors shifted to deep purple, a sign of dangerous determination. Then the council will have no choice but to declare a state of corrective intervention. Our combined fleets will enforce compliance. This is not a threat, Ambassador. It is a promise. Giwan looked up at the tower of delegates surrounding her. She took her time, making eye contact with each one who would meet her gaze. Many looked away. Finally, she spoke. Then I must inform you that humanity declines your demands. The chaos that followed was immediate. Delegates shouted. Some rose from their floating platforms. Security drones activated and moved to defensive positions. Through it all, Giwan remained calm and motionless at the center of the storm. Velkrin's voice boomed over the noise. You would choose war with the entire galaxy over simple compliance? Is your species insane? We choose freedom over submission, Giwan replied. We choose dignity over servitude. We choose to stand rather than kneel. Arrogant child species, another delegate hissed. You think your primitive warships can stand against the combined might of the Council? We have 5,000 ships of the line. We have weapons that can crack planets. What do you have? Jiwan smiled slightly. We have conviction. Vexler managed to restore some order to the chamber. Ambassador Giwan, I will give you 7 days to return to your government and convince them of their folly. 7 days to reconsider. If you do not comply, the Council fleet will advance on your territories. This is your final opportunity to avoid catastrophe. Giwan bowed, a formal gesture of respect that surprised many in the chamber. Thank you for your time, Magistrate. I will convey your message to my government. I do not believe their answer will change, but I will ask. She turned to leave, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. As she reached the exit, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. Magistrate, delegates of the Council, may I offer one piece of advice before I go? Dexler's color shifted to curious yellow. Speak. In 7 days, you will see what humanity truly is. When that moment comes, I hope you will remember that we gave you a choice. We offered peace. We asked only for fair treatment. What comes next is not our desire. It is your decision. Is that a threat? Velkrin demanded. No, Guan said softly. It is a farewell. May your gods have mercy on you, for when the time comes, we cannot. She left the chamber. Behind her, the delegates erupted into speculation and anger. They debated what her words meant. They calculated their military advantages. They planned their attack routes. They were certain of their superiority. Not one of them considered that they might be wrong in the command center of the Council station. Velkrin watched Jiwan's ship undock and jump to hyperspace. His aide, Syra, stood beside him. Her feathers were ruffled with concern. She seemed to calm, Syra said. A species facing extinction should show fear, anger, desperation. She showed none of these things. Perhaps humans are simply foolish, Velkrin replied. But even as he said it, he felt doubt creeping into his mind. In his long military career, he had learned one important lesson. The most dangerous enemy was not the one who raged and threatened. It was the one who remained calm when they should be terrified. He pushed the thought away. The numbers were clear. Humanity had perhaps 60 warships capable of real combat. The Council had 5,000. The math was simple. What Velkrin did not know was that humanity had never been good at fighting fair. They had spent 60 years learning that lesson. And in 7 days, they would teach it to the galaxy. The Antarctic ice stretched endlessly in all directions, white and empty under the pale sun. Nothing moved on the surface, except the wind. Nothing suggested that beneath 3 kilometers of ice lay humanity's most carefully guarded. Secret Minho stood in the operations center and watched the holographic display showing Giwan's testimony before the Council. He had already seen it twice, but he watched again. Every word mattered. Every gesture had meaning. When the recording finished, he turned to his assistant. Send the activation codes, Minho said. Protocol witness is now active. Hannah nodded and her fingers moved across the holographic interface. Confirmed. All observation posts are recording. Every Council communication is being monitored and archived. The documentation sequence has begun. Minho looked around the operations center. 50 people worked at various stations, their faces lit by the glow of their screens. They were human, but they represented every nation on Earth and every colony world humanity had settled. They wore no uniforms and carried no ranks. The facility itself had no official name. In the secret communications, it was simply called the Accord. The Silent Accord had been created 60 years ago, within weeks of humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council. That first contact had been everything humans had dreamed of. Alien civilizations, advanced technology, peaceful cooperation among the stars. Earth's governments had celebrated. People danced in the streets. It seemed like a new golden age had begun, but some people had been more cautious. Some people had asked questions, and what they found had horrified them. Minho walked to his office and activated the secure files. He had read them hundreds of times, but they still filled him with cold anger. The files contained 60 years of intelligence gathering, thousands of documents, millions of hours of surveillance, and one undeniable conclusion. The Galactic Council was built on lies. They called themselves peacekeepers, but they maintained peace through manipulation and control. They spoke of protecting younger species, but what they actually did was keep those species weak. The Council had rules about expansion, about military development, about technology sharing. Every rule was designed to prevent any species from becoming powerful enough to challenge them. When a species started growing too strong, the Council found ways to stop them. Sometimes they used economic pressure. Sometimes they arranged accidents. Sometimes they started wars between species and then stepped in as mediators, weakening both sides in the process. They had been doing this for 3,000 years. The Council's founding members were the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. They had reached their positions through the same ruthless methods they now use to keep others down. And they had created a civilization where slavery was common, where exploitation was normal, and where any talk of real freedom was crushed. Humanity had discovered all of this within the first 5 years of contact. Earth's intelligence services had been very good at finding secrets. What they found had forced a terrible decision. Should humanity expose the Council and risk being destroyed? Should they submit and accept a future of controlled servitude? Or should they do something else? They had chosen a third option. They would pretend to comply while preparing for the day when they would tear the whole corrupt system down. Minho closed the files and returned to the operations center. Taeyeon was waiting for him. The marshal commander was a large man with graying hair, the bearing of someone who had spent his life in military service. He commanded all of humanity's military forces, both the ones the Council knew about and the ones they did not. The fleets are moving into position, Taeyeon said. Operation Final Judgment is proceeding on schedule. Any reaction from Council forces? Minho asked, confusion mostly. They expected us to reinforce our border worlds or pull back to defensive positions. Instead, we are doing neither. Our movements do not match any tactical pattern they understand. Minho smiled grimly. Good. Let them wonder. Over the next several hours, reports came in from across human space. Civilian transports were evacuating the border colonies, but not fleeing to safety deeper in human territory. Instead, they were moving to specific coordinates in seemingly empty systems. These systems had been scouted and prepared years ago. Temporary habitats were already in place, hidden and waiting. Military vessels were repositioning into a massive spherical formation around Council space. Each ship was carefully placed at coordinates calculated months in advance. To the Council, it must look random or perhaps insane. They would not understand the pattern until it was too late. Hannah approached with a new report. Sir, we are receiving encrypted messages from our embedded assets. Show me. The holographic display lit up with dozens of status reports. They came from humans who had spent years, sometimes decades, working within Council society. Some were traders who had sold technology to Council species. Some were technicians who had helped upgrade Council military systems. Some were diplomats, scientists, teachers, or simple merchants. All of them had been placing tiny pieces of code into every system they touched. Backdoors hidden so deep that even the most advanced Council AI systems could not detect them. Each piece was harmless by itself. But when activated together, they would give humanity complete control over nearly every piece of military technology the Council possessed. 60 years of preparation, Taeyeon said quietly. Sometimes I still cannot believe we kept the secret this long. Fear is a powerful motivator, Minho replied. Everyone involved understood what would happen if we were discovered. The Council would not just destroy us. They would make an example of us that would terrify the galaxy for centuries. And now, we are going to make an example of them, Taeyeon said. Minho corrected. We are going to free the galaxy. There is a difference. Across human space, military personnel received their final briefings. The orders were clear and simple. When the time came, they would disable every Council warship simultaneously. They would not fire on disabled vessels. They would not invade Council worlds. They would simply remove the Council's ability to make war while humanity broadcast the evidence of the Council's crimes. The goal was not conquest. It was liberation. G1 returned to Earth and came directly to the Accord facility. Minho met her in the conference room. She looked tired but determined. "They will attack in 7 days," she said. "They are assembling a fleet of 5,000 warships. They plan to bombard our border colonies until we surrender." "Let them come," Minho said. "Everything is ready." "Are we certain this will work?" G1 asked. "If even one part of the plan fails, billions will die." "We are as certain as we can be," Minho replied. "But you are right. This is a gamble. We are betting everything on our preparation, our technology, and our belief that most species in the galaxy will choose freedom when given the chance. And if we are wrong?" Minho looked at the holographic display showing the Council's fleet assembling. "Then we will fight until we cannot fight anymore. But I do not believe we are wrong. I have read the intelligence reports from 1,000 worlds. Everywhere there are people who dream of freedom. They whisper about it in secret. They pass forbidden ideas to their children. They wait for someone to show them that resistance is possible. We will be that someone," Juan said. "Yes. In 7 days, the galaxy will see what humanity truly is. Not conquerors. Not destroyers. But liberators. We will show them that freedom is worth fighting for. We will prove that justice can triumph over tyranny."
Joined
them in the conference room. "The last of our civilian evacuations will be complete in 4 days. After that, every human in the combat zone will be a volunteer who understands the risks," Good Minho said. "I want no innocent casualties on our side if we can avoid it." "And on their side?" Taeon asked. "We disable, not destroy. We expose, not execute. We give them every chance to surrender and face justice. But if they choose to fight after we have removed their weapons, then we will have no choice but to finish this." The three of them stood together, looking at the display. Somewhere out in the galaxy, Council was preparing for what they thought would be a simple military action against an upstart species. They had no idea that they were walking into a trap 60 years in the making. They could not imagine that the species they thought was weak had actually been preparing for this moment since the day they joined galactic civilization. In 7 days, everything would change. The galaxy would learn the truth about the Council, and humanity would discover if their gamble had been worth the risk. Velcrin stood in the Council's military command center and stared at the tactical display. 3 days had passed since humanity rejected the ultimatum. 3 days of waiting for the human response that never came. "Nothing," he said to Syra. "They are doing absolutely nothing." "That is not quite accurate," Syra replied. Her feathers shifted through colors that indicated concentration. "They are evacuating their border colonies. But the evacuees are not fleeing to safety. They are moving to empty systems and establishing temporary settlements." "That makes no sense," Velcrin said. "Why evacuate if not to save lives? Why move to systems with no infrastructure or defenses?" "Perhaps they plan to scatter their population," one of the tactical officers suggested. "Make it harder for us to target them." Velcrin shook his head. "We are not planning genocide. We want compliance, not extinction. They must know this." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. Did humans know that? The Council's history was full of species that had been reduced to primitive states through military intervention. Some species had never recovered. Perhaps humans had studied that history and decided that evacuation was their only hope. Yet something felt wrong about that explanation. Gyuan had not seemed like someone preparing for her species' destruction. She had been too calm, too confident. And her final words kept echoing in Velcrin's mind. "May your gods have mercy on you, for we cannot." "Show me the human fleet positions," Velcrin ordered. The tactical display shifted to show human space. Red markers indicated human military vessels. There were more than Velcrin had expected. Not 60 ships, but closer to 200. That was still insignificant compared to the Council's 5,000. But it suggested humanity had been hiding assets. What worried Velkrin more was the pattern of their movements. Over the past 3 days, human ships had been jumping to new positions constantly. They were not retreating to defend their colonies. They were not advancing to meet the Council fleet. Instead, they were spreading out in what seemed like a random pattern around the outer edge of Council space.
What are they doing?
Velkrin muttered. The pattern suggests a spherical formation, the tactical officer said, but the sphere is enormous. It encompasses most of Council space, and the ships are too far apart to support each other in combat. Run probability simulations, Velkrin ordered. Every tactical scenario you can imagine. I want to know what they are planning. The command center's AI systems went to work. Thousands of scenarios were calculated in seconds. The results appeared on the display. Every simulation showed the same outcome. The human formation made no tactical sense. It could not attack effectively. It could not defend effectively. It served no military purpose that the AI could identify. Perhaps they are simply inexperienced, Cyrus suggested. They have been a spacefaring species for less than a century. Maybe they do not understand fleet tactics. No, Velkrin said firmly. I have reviewed Jiwan's service record. Before becoming an ambassador, she was a military strategist. Her tactical papers on asymmetric warfare are brilliant. She is not stupid, and I doubt her military commanders are either. Then what are they doing? Velkrin had no answer. On the 4th day, something new happened. The human ships stopped moving. They held their positions in the spherical formation, making no aggressive moves, simply waiting. At the same time, human communication channels went completely silent. No diplomatic messages. No military transmissions. No civilian broadcasts that Council sensors could detect. The silence was unnerving. Vexler called an emergency session of the Council. The crystalline magistrate pulsed with agitated colors as delegates filed into the chamber. When everyone was assembled, Vexler spoke. The human response makes no sense. They are not fleeing. They are not negotiating. They are not preparing obvious defenses. They are simply positioning ships and waiting. I want explanations. Perhaps this is a cultural response, one delegate suggested. Some species have traditions of accepting death with dignity. Maybe humans are simply waiting for the end. That does not match their historical behavior, another delegate countered. Humans are known for their stubborn resistance to impossible odds. Their own history is full of last stands and desperate defenses. This passive waiting is not consistent with their nature. Maybe they are planning a surprise attack, someone else said. They wait until our fleet arrives, then strike from their dispersed positions. With 200 ships against 5,000, Velkrin said. That would not be a surprise attack. That would be suicide. The debate continued for hours. No one could agree on what humanity was planning. Finally, Vexler called for order. Regardless of their intentions, our course is clear. In 3 days, the fleet will advance. If humans resist, we will disable their military capacity. If they surrender, we will occupy their worlds and dismantle their government. Either way, this situation will be resolved. The meeting ended, but Velkrin remained troubled. He returned to the command center and spent hours reviewing every piece of intelligence about humanity. Their technology, their culture, their military history. He searched for anything that might explain their current behavior. What he found only deepened his concern. Humans were relatively primitive in most areas of technology. Their ships were slower than Council vessels. Their weapons were less powerful. Their computers were less advanced. But in one area, humans excelled. They were masters of digital systems, of code and algorithms. They had integrated their technology with Council systems faster than any species in recorded history. Human technicians had helped upgrade dozens of Council military installations. Human traders had sold computational hardware to half the species in the Council. Human programmers had written compatibility software that was now used throughout Council space. Velkrin felt a chill run through his body. No, it could not be that simple. The Council's security systems were the best in the galaxy. No species could possibly infiltrate them on a meaningful scale, and certainly not in just 60 years, but doubt continued to grow. On the 5th day, Velcrin ordered a security review of all Council military systems. He wanted every piece of human-made hardware examined, every line of code checked, every system that had been touched by human hands inspected. The review would take weeks to complete thoroughly. The fleet was scheduled to advance in 2 days. "Sir, perhaps we should delay the operation," Cyrus suggested. "Until the security review is complete." Velcrin wanted to agree, but he knew the Council would never accept such a delay. They had declared their intention. To back down now would show weakness. Other species might get ideas about resisting Council authority. "Continue preparations," Velcrin ordered, "but increase security protocols. I want every ship running isolated systems during the advance. No networked controls. Human operators on manual stations where possible." It was the best he could do given the time constraints. On the 6th day, the human silence finally broke, but not with a message to the Council. Instead, humanity broadcast a single message to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The message was simple and short. "Witness what comes next. Judgment has arrived." Broadcast used every communication frequency. It bypassed normal channels and appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. It could not be blocked or stopped. For 30 seconds, those 8 words appeared everywhere. Then the transmission ended, and the silence returned. Dexler summoned Velcrin immediately. "What does it mean? What judgment? Are they planning some kind of attack?" "I do not know," Velcrin admitted. "But I recommend we proceed with extreme caution." "The Council does not show caution to defiant species," Dexler said coldly. "We show strength. The fleet advances tomorrow as planned." Velcrin left the meeting feeling like he was walking toward a cliff in the darkness. Every instinct told him something was wrong, but he had his orders. The fleet would advance. That night, he stood alone in the observation deck and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, 200 human ships waited in their strange spherical formation. In less than a day, 5,000 Council warships would advance to crush them. It should have been a simple operation. An overwhelming force against a vastly outnumbered enemy. Victory was certain, so why did Velcrin feel like he was about to lose? He thought about Jawan's calm face as she rejected the Council's demands. He thought about her final words. He thought about 60 years of humans integrating themselves into every aspect of Council society. He thought about the security review that would not be complete in time, and he realized with horrible certainty that humanity had been planning something from the very beginning. Not a military response? Something else. Something the Council had not anticipated because it was not thinking like a warrior. It was thinking like prey that had learned to be predator. Velcrin pulled out his communication device and tried to contact Dexler. He needed to convince the magistrate to delay the operation. They needed more time to understand what they were walking into. But the communication did not connect. A message appeared on his screen. "All long-range communications are temporarily restricted due to security protocols." Someone had cut communications between the fleet and Council command. Someone with high-level access to the military systems. Velcrin ran to the command center, his heart's pounding. When he arrived, everything seemed normal. Officers worked at their stations. The tactical displays showed the fleet preparing for departure, but as Velcrin watched, he noticed small anomalies. A system check taking slightly longer than normal. A data transfer that briefly showed an unusual pattern. Tiny glitches that appeared and disappeared. The humans were already in the systems. They were already moving, and in less than a day, everyone would see what 60 years of preparation had built. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 5,000 warships spread across the void in a display of overwhelming power. They approached the nearest human colony world with weapons armed and shields raised. Every ship was ready for battle. Velcrin stood on the bridge of the flagship and watched the tactical display. The human colony world appeared peaceful. No defensive platforms activated. No ships rose to meet them. The planet seemed to be waiting passively for what came next. Life signs, Velcrin asked. "Minimal, sir," the sensor officer reported. The evacuation appears to be complete. Only a few thousand individuals remain, probably military personnel who stayed behind. Any active weapons? Scanning now. Sir, all defensive installations are powered down. No weapons are targeting us. No shield generators are active. Felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. But the fleet had its orders. Prepare to fire on military installations, Velkrin commanded. Precision strikes only. Minimize collateral damage. The weapons officers began their targeting sequences. Energy built in the massive cannons that lined the flagship. Across the fleet, 5,000 warships prepared to fire, then everything stopped. The lights on the bridge flickered and died. The holographic displays vanished. The hum of the ship's engines faded to silence. Emergency lighting activated, casting everything in dim red light. Report, Velkrin shouted into the sudden darkness. Sir, we have lost main power. Engines are offline. Weapons are offline. Shields are down. The sensor officer's voice was panicked. Life support is running on emergency reserves. Switch to backup systems. Backup systems are not responding, sir. Neither are tertiary systems. Every automated system has failed simultaneously. Velkrin felt ice in his blood. Communications. Contact the other ships in the fleet. The communications officer worked frantically at his manual controls. Sir, I am receiving distress signals from every ship in the fleet. All are reporting the same situation. Complete system failure across all automated functions. In 30 seconds, the greatest military fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Council had been reduced to 5,000 floating metal tombs. The ships still had air and emergency lights, but they could not move, could not shoot, could not even turn without manual control of small maneuvering thrusters. How is this possible? Someone whispered. Velkrin knew exactly how it was possible. 60 years of preparation. 60 years of humans integrating themselves into Council technology. 60 years of placing hidden code into every system they touched. And now, with a single command, they had activated all of it at once. Sir, I am detecting ships approaching, the sensor officer said, using the manual backup systems. Human vessels. They are moving into position around the fleet? Are they firing? No, sir. They are just positioning themselves. Maintaining a safe distance, across Council space, the same scenario played out everywhere. Every military installation lost power. Every defense platform went dark. Every warship became a helpless hulk floating in space. In the span of 30 seconds, the Council's entire military capability was neutralized, and humanity had not fired a single. Sha Chunji sat in the command center of humanity's flagship and watched the data streams flowing across her display. Every metric showed green. Every infiltration protocol had activated perfectly. Every back door had opened exactly as designed. 60 years of patience, she said quietly to Minho, who stood beside her. It all worked. Phase 1 is complete, Minho replied. Now comes Phase 2. Hannah, begin the broadcast. Across the galaxy, on every world and every city, on every device capable of receiving a signal, the same transmission began to play. It could not be blocked. It could not be shut off. It had been embedded into the core communication protocols that the entire galactic civilization relied on. Giwan's face appeared on screens everywhere. Her expression was serious but not angry. She looked like someone who was about to reveal a terrible truth because it was necessary, not because she wanted to. People of the galactic community, she began. My name is Juan, and I represent humanity. What you are witnessing today is not an attack. It is a revelation. For 60 years, since humanity first joined galactic civilization, we have been documenting the crimes of those who rule over you. Today we share that evidence with you. The image changed. Documents appeared. Financial records showing slave trading on a massive scale. Species were bought and sold like property, their legal status carefully hidden behind layers of bureaucratic language. The Council called it custodial protection, but the reality was slavery, More evidence followed. Recorded conversations of council members discussing how to manipulate species into fighting each other. Wars that killed millions all started because the council wanted to weaken species that were growing too powerful. The conversations were casual, discussing genocide the way someone might discuss a business decision. Video footage showed council forces destroying technology centers on developing worlds. The official reports called it preventing dangerous proliferation. The video showed it was simply keeping species primitive and dependent. On and on the evidence flowed. Hours of recordings, thousands of documents. Proof of assassinations, false flag operations, economic manipulation, and systematic oppression spanning centuries. The evidence was methodically organized, cross-referenced, and undeniable. In the council chamber, Wexler watched the broadcast with growing horror. The magistrate's crystalline body flickered through colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. "Stop the broadcast," Wexler commanded. "We cannot, magistrate," a technician reported. "It is embedded in the core communication systems. We would have to shut down the entire galactic network to stop it, then shut it down. That would take hours, possibly days. And the damage is already done. The broadcast has been running for 20 minutes. Billions have already seen it." Wexler realized the full scope of humanity's plan. They had not prepared a military response. They had prepared something far more dangerous. They had prepared the truth. The broadcast continued. Giwan's face returned to the screen. "The council has maintained order through fear and manipulation," she said. "They have called themselves peacekeepers, while crushing any species that sought true freedom. For 3,000 years, they have ruled through lies. Today, those lies end." The image changed again, showing Taeyeon. The martial commander looked every bit the professional soldier. "The council's military forces are currently disabled," Taeyeon said. "We have not destroyed their ships. We have not killed their personnel. We have simply removed their ability to enforce tyranny through violence. This was not an act of war. It was an act of justice." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. "The council declared war on humanity because we refused to submit to their unjust demands. They believed we were weak. They believed we would break. They were wrong. We are not weak. We are patient. We are just... And we are done watching this corrupt system destroy civilizations." The broadcast showed human ships positioned around the disabled council fleet. Not attacking. Just watching, waiting. "We offer the council a choice," Taeyeon continued. "Surrender peacefully and face justice for your crimes. Allow the galaxy to judge you fairly and openly, or continue to resist, and we will be forced to take more permanent measures. We do not want to kill you, but we will not allow you to continue oppressing the galaxy." The broadcast shifted one final time, showing Minho. "To the people of the galaxy," he said, "what happens next is your choice. Humanity does not seek to rule you. We seek to free you. The evidence you have seen today is yours to judge. The council's fate is yours to decide. We have given you the truth. We have given you freedom from the military power that enforced the lies. What you build from here is up to you." The broadcast ended. But the damage was complete. On council worlds, people poured into the streets. Some protested. Some celebrated. Some simply stood in shock at what they had learned. On subject worlds, revolutions began immediately. Species that had been held down for centuries finally saw the truth about their oppression. Communication channels lit up across the galaxy. Governments contacted each other. Species that had been enemies realized they had been manipulated. Alliances began to form not based on council authority, but on mutual interest and shared desire for freedom. In the disabled flagship, Velkrin listened to the reports coming in. The council's carefully maintained order was collapsing, not because of military defeat, but because everyone now knew the truth. He thought about Jiwan's final words before she left the council chamber. "May your gods have mercy on you, for we cannot." She had not been threatening war. She had been promising justice. And justice, Velkrin realized, could be far more devastating than any weapon. On Earth, in the facility beneath the Antarctic ice, the members of the Silent Accord watched the galaxy react to their revelation. Some were crying, some were smiling. All of them looked exhausted. "We did it," Hannah whispered. "We actually did it." "Phase 2 is complete," Minho said. "Now comes the hard part, helping them build something better." Outside, across hundreds of worlds, the real work was just beginning. But for the first time in 3,000 years, it would be work done in freedom, not in chains. 3 months had passed since humanity revealed the truth to the galaxy. 3 months since the Council's power collapsed in a single day. The galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. Taeon stood on the observation deck of the human command ship and watched the meeting taking place below. Representatives from 40 different species gathered in the converted cargo bay that now served as a temporary council chamber. Unlike the old council's chamber, this one had no floating platforms or towers of judgment. Everyone sat at the same level. Everyone had an equal voice. "How is it going?" Giwan asked, joining him at the window. "Better than expected," Taeon replied. "Though that is not saying much. I expected chaos, violence, and possibly civil war on half the council worlds." "We got some of that," Giwan said, "but less than we feared. Most species seem more interested in building something new than in revenge. Most, but not all." Juan nodded. The transition had not been peaceful everywhere. Some of the Council's founding species had tried to maintain control through local forces. Some subject species had turned on their former oppressors with violence. Human peacekeeping forces had been stretched thin, trying to prevent massacres while still respecting each world's
right to self-determination below them.
Velkrin was speaking to the assembly. The former council military coordinator had surprised everyone by becoming one of humanity's strongest allies in the transition. After witnessing the evidence of the council's crimes, he had publicly denounced his former masters and offered his services to help build a better system. "The challenge we face is unprecedented," Velkrin said to the assembled representatives. "For 3,000 years, the council provided structure, even if that structure was corrupt. Now, we must build something new without the template of tyranny to guide us, Kaya, or to constrain us," added Syra, who sat beside him. The Avian had also joined the reform movement. "We have an opportunity to create something that has never existed in galactic history. A true federation of equals." The debate that followed was passionate. Some species wanted strong central authority to prevent chaos. Others wanted complete independence with minimal cooperation. Some called for immediate trials of all former council members. Others advocated for reconciliation and forgiveness. Humanity's representatives mostly listened. Minho had been clear about their role. They would help advise and provide resources, but they would not dictate. The galaxy had to choose its own path. Weeks earlier, the formal trial of the Council's leadership had begun. It was held not on Earth or any human world, but on a neutral station that had been constructed specifically for this purpose. The judges came from every species that had suffered under Council rule. The prosecutors included victims and legal experts from dozens of worlds. Vexler stood in the center of the court, no longer glowing with authority but dim and subdued. The crystalline being listened as witness after witness described the suffering caused by Council policies. Species that had been kept primitive deliberately. Worlds that had been economically devastated by Council manipulation. Individuals who had lost families to wars the Council had orchestrated. The evidence humanity had gathered was presented methodically. Financial records. Recorded conversations. Internal memos discussing how to weaken rising species. Orders for assassinations disguised as accidents. 3,000 years of careful documentation of crimes. Through it all, Dexler remained silent. The magistrate had no defense to offer. The evidence was undeniable. When the prosecution finished, the court asked if Dexler wished to speak. The crystalline being pulsed slowly through muted colors. "I have nothing to say that would justify what we did," Dexler said. "The Council believed we were maintaining stability. We believed that without our control, the galaxy would descend into chaos and war. We told ourselves that our actions were necessary, even when they were cruel. The courtroom was silent. But belief does not excuse crime, Vexler continued. Intention does not erase harm. We maintained peace through oppression. We prevented chaos through tyranny. And we convinced ourselves this was noble because it preserved order. The magistrate's colors shifted to something that looked like shame. Humanity has shown us what we should have been. They prepared for 60 years, not for conquest, but for liberation. They disabled our fleets without killing our people. They revealed our crimes without demanding vengeance. They gave the galaxy truth and freedom, asking nothing in return except the chance to build something better. Vexler looked around at the judges, at the spectators, at the cameras broadcasting this trial across the galaxy. I do not ask for mercy. I ask only that you build the future we failed to create. Make something worthy of the freedom humanity gave you. The trial continued for weeks. More witnesses. More evidence. More stories of suffering caused by council policies. In the end, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was not death. The judges, many of whom had suffered directly under council rule, chose a different punishment. The council's leaders would spend the rest of their lives working to repair the damage they had caused. They would assist in rebuilding worlds they had damaged. They would teach younger species without trying to control them. They would live to see the better civilization they had failed to create. Some called it too lenient. Others called it wise, but it sent a message to the galaxy. The new order would not be built on revenge. It would be built on justice, restoration, and hope for something better. Back on Earth, the Silent Accord held its final meeting. The facility beneath the Antarctic ice would be shut down. The organization that had worked in shadows for 60 years would dissolve. Its purpose was complete. Minho stood before the 50 people who had dedicated their lives to this moment. Many looked older than their years. The stress of keeping such enormous secrets had taken its toll. We set out 60 years ago to free the galaxy from tyranny, Minho said. We succeeded. But our success came at a cost. Many of you spent decades away from your families, living false lives, carrying secrets that could never be shared. Some of our people died without ever seeing their work come to fruition. He paused, looking at each face. What we did was necessary, but it should never be necessary again. The new Galactic Federation is building checks and balances, transparency requirements, and democratic oversight. They are creating a system where what we did in secret will be done in public, where justice is open and fair, where no species can accumulate the kind of unchecked power the Council held. What happens to us now? Hannah asked. We return to normal life, Minho said. We become the people we pretended to be. Teachers, engineers, merchants, diplomats. We live openly, without secrets, in the world we helped create. Will anyone know what we did? Someone asked. Eventually, yes, but not now. For now, the galaxy needs to believe that change came from within, that species chose freedom rather than having it given to them. In a few generations, when the new order is stable, our story will be told. But we will be history by then, not heroes. It was a strange ending for people who had shaped the fate of the galaxy. No parades. No medals. No public recognition. Just quiet satisfaction and the knowledge that their sacrifice had mattered. The meeting ended. People said their goodbyes and left the facility one by one. Within days, the Antarctic installation would be empty. Its computers wiped, its secrets buried forever under the ice. A year after the revelation, the first meeting of the Free Systems Alliance took place. It was held on a space station that orbited a neutral star, a location chosen by lottery so no species could claim precedence. 300 species sent representatives. Not just the former council members and their subjects, but also species that had never been part of the old order. The whole galaxy wanted to be part of what came next. Jiwan attended as one of humanity's delegates. She watched as species that had been enemies for centuries shook hands and made peace. She listened as civilizations that had been kept primitive shared their ideas with advanced societies that treated them as equals. She saw hope in places where there had only been despair. The Alliance's founding charter was simple. No species would rule over another. No central authority would have unchecked power. Decisions would be made democratically, with protections for minority voices. Trade would be fair. Technology would be shared freely. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration, not violence. It was not perfect. Nothing created by imperfect beings could be perfect. There would be challenges, disagreements, probably even small conflicts. But it was built on freedom rather than oppression, on cooperation rather than control. During a break in the proceedings, Velcrin approached Jiwan. The former military coordinator looked years younger than when she had first met him. The burden of serving a corrupt system had been lifted. "I wanted to thank you," Velcrin said. "When you stood before the council a year ago, I thought you were foolish. I thought humanity would be destroyed for its defiance. Many of my people thought the same," Jiwan admitted. "But you knew something we did not. You knew that the truth, once revealed, is more powerful than any weapon. You knew that most beings want freedom, not masters. You knew that tyranny falls not when it is attacked, but when it is exposed." Jiwan smiled. "We had good teachers. We studied Earth's history, all the times tyranny fell to people who simply refused to accept it any longer. We applied those lessons on a galactic scale. Your species has given the galaxy a gift," Velcrin said. "I hope we prove worthy of it." "You already are," Jiwan replied. "Look around. Species working together freely. Ideas being shared openly. Hope where there was only fear. This is what you have built in just 1 year. Imagine what you will build in a century." The meeting resumed. Over the next weeks, the representatives hammered out the details of the alliance structure. There were arguments and compromises. Some walked out in frustration, though most came back. Slowly, painfully, democratically, they created something new. When the meeting finally ended, the Free Systems Alliance had its charter, its structure, and its first set of shared laws. It was imperfect and would need constant refinement. But it existed, and it was free. Tyon stood with Minho on Earth, watching the news coverage of the Alliance's formation. The Marshal Commander looked tired but satisfied. "Do you think it will last?" Tyon asked. "Nothing lasts forever," Minho replied. "But if we did our job right, it will last long enough for people to forget what tyranny felt like. Long enough that future generations will think freedom is normal. Long enough that when challenges come, people will solve them together rather than letting strongmen take control." Hey, that is a lot to hope for. Hope is what we gave them. Hope and truth, and the freedom to choose their own future. Whether they make good choices is up to them now. They watched as human ships began returning to normal patrol patterns. The massive military buildup of the past 60 years was being scaled back. Humanity no longer needed to prepare for war against the galaxy. They could finally just be one species among many, building their civilization in peace. Somewhere in the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people went about their daily lives in freedom. They worked, loved, argued, dreamed, and built futures for themselves and their children. Most would never know about the Silent Accord or the people who had spent 60 years preparing for one moment. Most would never realize how close they had come to living under tyranny forever, but they were free, and that was enough. On Earth, as the sun set over the Antarctic ice, the last lights in the underground facility went dark. The Silent Accord was finished. Its work was done. The galaxy would never know what had been planned there, what sacrifices had been made there, what hope had been nurtured there in the darkness, and that was exactly as it should be. Freedom did not need monuments or recognition. It just needed to exist. And now, for the first time in 3,000 years, it did.